This is the representation of the kind of quality of speakers that we have here at West Hawaii Forum. And we put these monthly forums on to provide as much civic involvement and education on issues that are important to you, the community. We are one island. We are one community.
My name is Jane Clement. I am the president of Community Forums, and I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight on a Friday night. Somebody posted on our Facebook, it's Pauhana, but I really want to thank you guys for choosing to be here tonight. It just tells me that this forum tonight is important to you. Community Forums is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. And I would like to introduce members of our board who are working very hard here tonight, starting with Isaiah Heyer at the back. He's manning our camera. And next to him is Scott Ordway. He is managing our sound booth. And sitting at the back there is our former council chair, Pete Hoffman. Raise your hand, Pete. There he is. And moderating for us tonight is Miss Candee Ellsworth. This is your first time to our forum. I want to welcome you. We plan, organize, and host this monthly forums on various issues and topics that are important to you and me, that affect our lives and livelihood. This forum tonight is being recorded live. In about a week or so, it will be shown on Naleo TV. Viewing schedule will be posted on our Facebook page as well as our website. And if you have not gone to our website yet, it's www.westhawaiiforum.org. All of our past forums, information on our past forums is there. As you can see, the arrows is past forum. And then this is what you will see. Last month we did a Little Fire Ant Awareness Forum. All the information will be there, including the full video of the forum. And like I said, information will also be available on our Facebook page, facebook.com/West Hawaii Forum. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Candee Ellsworth.
Aloha, everyone. So tonight's forum is about a topic that we've been hearing a lot of suggestions and questions about in Hawaii County, and that is our recycling program. And there have been some major changes, and so there's a lot of miscommunication, people that don't quite understand what we're able to recycle, what we can do ourselves, what we're not able to do any longer, and why. And so we're going to address that tonight. So we have Elizabeth Elkjer, and she is the Director of Marketing at Sustainable Island Products. And we have Bill Kucharski, and he is our Director of the Department of Environmental Management here in Hawaii County. And then we also have Nicole Lowen, who's our State Representative of District 6. And each one of them is going to tell us a little bit different from their perspective and their expertise, what we can do, try to answer the questions of why. And during the first hour of the forum, we'll listen to the presenters. And if you have a question, make sure you write it down. There's cards provided at the table behind and pens. If you need more, just raise your hand and somebody will get them to you. And that way we can let the presenters get through their presentation. uninterrupted. And then afterwards, in the second part of the community forum, we will have the opportunity for you guys to get the answers to the questions that you've already submitted, or to ask questions directly. So with that, I'll let Elizabeth take it away.
Awesome. Aloha, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Elkjer. I'm the Director of Marketing from Sustainable Island Products. I have a master's degree in Global Leadership and Sustainable Development and a certificate in Environmental Policy from Hawaii Pacific University. And I'm going to talk to you about the composting side and compostable products side of closing the loop here on our island. So compostable products are plant-based. They're made from renewable resources such as corn, sugarcane, which is also known as bagasse, wheat straw, as well as paper. So these are a few examples of some of the compostable products used here in our community. So it can be used anything from poke nachos to a burger to halo halo, kalua pork and rice, fairly diverse and versatile. So it might be a little bit hard to see, but up here we have utensils up in the upper corner. The lighting makes it a little difficult, but we do have compostable utensils, deli containers, clamshells, and sushi trays, as well as clear cups and straws. All of those are made from corn, otherwise known as PLA or polylactic acid. Then there's also paper products like our hot cups and soup bowls, which are going to be Forestry Stewardship Council certified or Sustainable Forestry Initiative paper. And then we have fiber containers, such as the taco box, which is on the bottom left, so showing a little bit of the innovation that compostable products do have. Meat trays, which is the next one on the bottom, the second from the left on the bottom, other to-go containers, and even bags with clear windows, and those clear windows are actually compostable as well, and paper straws. So I just kind of wanted to show you that there's a lot of different products that can actually be made from plants. And pizza boxes with the grease are compostable, not recyclable. So what's the difference between recyclable, biodegradable, and compostable? I hear this a lot, and I hear these terms used interchangeably when they don't mean the same thing. So recyclable, conventional food service packaging is not recyclable if it's mixed with food waste. So a recyclable plastic plus food waste, not recyclable. Biodegradable means that something will break down naturally. So there's no time scale involved with that. So for example, wood is biodegradable, but a log cabin will stand for generations. Compostable is actually a certification, and it means that that product will break down in under 12 weeks or less, and therefore is suitable for commercial composting together with food waste. So a compostable product plus food waste is still compostable. So that leftover gravy, that little bit of rice, your half sandwich, the smoothie still left on the inside of your cup, all of those things remain completely compostable. So if we don't have a composting facility, then what's the point of using a compostable product? I hear that all the time as well. So compostable products are made from a renewable resource. Like I mentioned before, they're made from sugarcane, corn, wheat straw. They also take less water to make than a petroleum plastic does, and they use less carbon emissions to be made. So for example, you can make 2 compostable utensils for the same energy production as you would make 1 petroleum utensil. The same thing for plates, so that you can make 3 compostable plates with the same energy consumption as it would take to make 1 petroleum plate. So petroleum plastics, they're a finite resource. We only have so much petroleum on our planet. So we're using 100 years worth of durability because there are plastics in our life that are designed to last a long time. I have plastic drain pipes at my house, for example. I hope that those last 100 years. But we're asking for 100 years of durability and for something that we're using for 15 to 20 minutes. So again, it's not recyclable when mixed with food waste. And so that's why I think it's important to still look at renewable resources with compostables. I also think there's a lot of misinformation about a composting facility. When you hear that word industrial, we think smokestacks and great big mess and things like that. These are two examples of composting facilities on the mainland. The top one is in North Carolina, and the bottom one is in California. As you can see, they're not a great big industrial facility as you would think in your mind. These are just lines of piles of organic matter that are breaking down naturally. So compost is actually a completely natural process. It's our Earth's way of getting rid of our decaying matter. It's an aerobic activity, so composting facilities will use aeration as well as microbial breakdown to get all of that product to break down. Facilities can be as small as 3 acres and as large as 100 acres. And there's no smell emitted when properly maintained. That's another kind of misinformation, I think. And at the end, when it's all broken down, it makes a usable product, compost. So compost is powerful. It actually puts nutrients back into the soil, which reduces our reliance on fertilizers. Healthy soils create thriving horticulture, floriculture, and agriculture, which we actually have quite a bit of. Floriculture is a really large export for our island, and we have a strong agricultural industry here as well. So we actually can create economic benefit by having available compost for our farmers. This video, it's really short, but this is from my farm here in Kona. This is compost that I've created there. I have my compostable products in it. The PLA, the clear plastic, is not as easy to compost at home, but it can be done. It's best in an industrial facility because the industrial facilities will hit that high heat that's really necessary. The home composter doesn't necessarily pay attention to their pile all the time and make sure that that heat is maintained throughout the process. So, but the fibers are very easily home compostable. So compost is actually a really great way to battle climate change as well. Food scraps in a landfill, as they break down, it's an anaerobic activity, which means without oxygen, and in so doing, they release methane. Methane gas is 20 times more potent than CO2. So when our organic matters are going to the landfill, we're having a fairly large carbon or greenhouse gas impact. So from the perspective of the climate, compost is a triple win. It increases carbon sequestration. So compost actually sequesters carbon into our soils. When you apply compost on the top of soil, it will start to draw carbon down into it. A study was recently released. It was actually a 19-year study. They looked at carbon sequestration in grasslands through the addition of compost. And prior to this study, most studies had only looked at the top 12 inches of soil and the carbon sequestration from compost in that. This study actually found that carbon was sequestered several meters down into the soil. So we can continue to sequester carbon through the addition of compost. In addition, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions from not sending our organic matter to landfills, not having it incinerated, and also diverting it from allowing it to rot in some other way, releasing that methane gas. And lastly, compost increases the resiliency to extreme weather from climate change. By the addition of compost to our soils, we are increasing the water retention, so we're more resilient during a drought. And we're also, it maintains better moisture, therefore not causing as much erosion in heavy rains or in extreme weather. And that's pretty much it. Thank you, everybody.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is a great turnout for a Friday night. I'm Nicole Lowen. I represent District 6, and I also am chair of the Committee on Energy and Environment in the State House. So this subject matter, to the degree that it falls to the state, is under that committee's jurisdiction, and it is something that we look at. When this county announcement came out about the recycling program changes, we got a ton of calls about it because, you know, people don't differentiate, is it state, is it county? You know, people were really upset, feeling like they were creating more rubbish and not recycling. And so I think it's really timely to have this meeting now and be able to discuss it. So I'll jump in, and sorry, I have a bunch of family in town visiting, by the way, and old friends. It's been a crazy couple days, so these are kind of notes for me, and sorry that it's such a wordy slide. So this says, what is the state's role in solid waste management? And to a large degree, it's really just regulatory. So Department of Health makes sure that county programs are complying with things like Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, and then are generally setting policy. For the most part, jurisdiction of things like recycling and landfill management is delegated to the counties. That said, there are different programs. The state, we can set policy at a state level, and we have passed laws to do specific programs. This is an example of them. The Deposit Beverage Container Program, so the High Five program, that was passed in state law. The state has litter control laws. These mostly come from the 70s, but this establishes like what penalties you get for breaking the law and littering. We have an electronic recycling program, kind of, which mainly requires manufacturers who sell products in the state to register, pay money, which we then pass on to the counties for their e-waste program. This past year, my first year as chair, we actually passed a bill. We wanted to pass a broader bill to reduce plastic, which ended up at the end of session as a working group. So we passed this plastic source reduction working group, and they had the first meeting of that working group actually last week. So that's getting rolling. It's a big group of stakeholders in there, tasked with looking at this problem and coming up with how to reduce it at the source. So we're creating less stuff that we even need to recycle. But I would say like a large takeaway when you read through the state statute that does deal with solid waste management is that the statute is really outdated. Most of these laws haven't been touched since the 90s. Some of them are from the 70s. I kind of pulled this. I don't know if you can see this. This is a section of state law, and it's laudable that we want to encourage people to do double-sided photocopying. But office paper is no longer our largest problem. We do a lot of stuff electronically now. We have much bigger issues and different ways of thinking about our solid waste problems. So when you go look at the state statute, I think the biggest takeaway from this section of law is that it really needs to be overhauled to be brought in line with the things we need to accomplish today. So that said, I think it's been difficult, the decision for residents and for me as well to have this less opportunity to recycle. But if there's one takeaway from it, it has sort of forced us to confront our problems. Because I think what a lot of times people don't realize is, while we feel good about ourselves for recycling, a lot of the recycling programs we have in place are often not better than throwing things in the landfill when you look at the life cycle. Like if we're just shipping things out of state to Asia, we're not asking those countries to be accountable for how they manage that practice. And this is, kind of forced us to confront this problem and not be able to sweep it under the rug and say, well, I'm doing my part because I separated my trash and took it down to the transfer station. So these are opportunities I see, as far as what the state does have jurisdiction over, where the state could help set policy and step in, because as I said, and you'll hear, we're saving the best for last with Bill from Environmental Management, because this is the stuff he really works on all the time. One thing, I'm kind of starting with the big, dream big piece first. One thing I would like to see, enacted nationally, but you can always try to start these things at the state and see if you can push industries in a direction, is to have extended producer and manufacturer responsibility. So when these companies, Coca-Cola or Johnson & Johnson, companies produce products, they put it in plastic, they sell it to customers, they make a bunch of money, and then they saddle taxpayers with getting rid of the trash. And one way to think about it is every manufacturer of a product should have a responsibility to pay in or help manage or do some kind of take-back program of their products. This should especially, I feel like, be true for electronic waste recycling. And of course, electronic waste is something that has grown exponentially with smartphones and computers, and these items are becoming, we replace them more and more quickly. And there's a lot of valuable materials in those products that have huge environmental impacts when they're mined in, some mine in Africa or some other part of the world. So the idea that those things don't end up getting recycled because we're not sure what to do with them or it's just too inconvenient, it's really, really wasteful. So yeah, extended producer responsibility, it's a little bit challenging because we're just one state in one country and we're talking about trying to impose regulations on national and multinational corporations. That's usually a uphill battle, to say the least, but I think it does get attention. I feel like we did that with the sunscreen issue where we regulated big companies and now we're seeing other states and other countries change what they're doing and come along. So it's possible and it can make a difference. I think there's a big opportunity for increased education. There are things the county does, but there's not really a one-stop shop for just a regular person to, know what day of every month is the e-waste drop-off, or when is the hazardous waste pickup program. If the county is not accepting aluminum anymore or scrap metal, where can you drop that off? I think that there could be a lot of improvement in education and making sure the public knows what to do, and I think that responsibility, it's not fair to just put it on individuals to try to go figure it out on their own. I think that we do have to do more to do outreach and education on what programs are available. The state can set statutory goals, so we can, kind of set lofty aspirational goals. We can, set a goal for getting to zero waste. The county has a zero waste goal. But it's something the state could also implement, and sometimes that has just that additional clout that helps move things forward. The state could also look at through DBET, the Department of Business and Economic Development, we could look at how to help incentivize and foster innovation in recycling and composting and try to get some of those programs moving. Procurement laws, I'm skipping one here. Additionally, of course, our first thing we should try to do is to refuse or reduce and use less. But for waste we do create, we can look at doing energy conversion, capturing gas from landfill and using that for energy or for gas, which is better than a lot of times that just gets flared and burns off into the atmosphere and adds to our emissions anyway. So if we're using it to replace, something that we might have used another fossil fuel for anyway, then it's a net benefit. We can change our procurement laws. Again, when you look at where state procurement laws address this question of recycling and solid waste, it's very rooted in kind of this 1970s way of looking at recycling. A lot is about office paper. That's really the focus. I think there's a lot more we could do, for example, with food service containers, things like that. And there's a lot more products on the market today that can replace things that we've traditionally used that aren't recyclable or compostable, or that are just better for the environment generally. I think there's an opportunity, so we're almost to the bottom of this list, as I think Elizabeth mentioned, and probably Bill will mention as well, when we look at our recycling programs, we really need to consider them as a whole and look at the carbon life cycle impact and other environmental impacts of these programs and of the products that we use. So we don't want to continue to sweep problems under the rug and feel good about ourselves because we renewed our contract with whatever country in Asia is taking the rubbish. If that means that it actually doesn't have a benefit to issues we're dealing with, climate change and ocean pollution and all these things, we want to do something that actually does better and makes a dent in improving the problem. And so when we implement new programs, we should make looking at that carbon life cycle analysis part of how we consider what we want to choose to undertake. And last on that list, and this isn't a final list of all the opportunities, these are just some ideas that came to mind. I put construction waste. Construction waste is a huge amount of what goes into our landfill. I introduced a bill last year which didn't pass, but we can try again to mandate recycling of increasing percentages of construction waste, which I think got turned into a working group and then still didn't pass. But I did also help get the grant for Reuse Hawaii. I don't know if people are familiar with that company, but Reuse Hawaii now has a base yard in Kona. They deconstructed the Kona Village Resort, so instead of demolishing it, they went in there and took it apart piece by piece, made those materials available for other people to buy, and they will also do deconstruction of individual residences. If somebody, instead of tearing a house down, they'll come take it apart piece by piece so everything can be reused. Let's see. I think that about wraps it up. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but Like I said, I think my takeaway from all of this is there's a lot of opportunity to improve. We've kind of just been chugging along with our recycling program. We know it's not great. We know we should, refuse, reduce, use less, and we're piece by piece banning plastic bags and styrofoam and plastics, and I think all that is positive. And so while it was a really upsetting change for a lot of people to have the county, what happened with the county and not be able to bring as much of your recycling in, I think it's forced us to really have this conversation. And this conversation is really, really important and really needed, and hopefully really can be really productive. So I look forward to everyone's questions, and thank you.
The recycling started out with the two-bin recycling in 2002 or 2005 because of the integrated solid waste management plan. Representative Lowen mentioned some of the state requirements. An integrated solid waste management plan is required to be produced every 10 years by every county. We are in the process of completing the integrated solid waste management plan that's due in 2020. And there are a lot of good things that come out of this. And this is where the two bins started. Let's see. I have to walk over here because I can't read what I put. In the recycling on the overview, when this started, we took paper, newspaper, copy paper, mail, cardboard, then plastics, most every kind, plastic bags, film, metal, aluminum cans, glass containers, et cetera, and we can go down that list. Everyone probably wants to be able to take all of these materials and recycle them. We'd like to do that too. But what happened? Well, what happened is pretty straightforward, but it's not particularly easy to see from this side. First thing to point out is that the county does not physically recycle anything. We don't recycle it. We contract for people to recycle. And when we do that, we're subject to all of the procurement rules that are established within the state. So when we come in and say what happened, to start off with, the whole global market for reused and old recycling of plastics and paper and cardboard pretty much started to collapse. And those of you here that are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need, China was on the bottom plateau. We're not in the bottom plateau. Our perception of what is important and the perception of people that are wondering whether their children are going to eat is different. And so when we got there, then China said, look, we're not going to take it. So Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, well, we'll take it. And again, if we go back to Maslow's triangle and pyramid, these folks were also on the bottom. And so what happened is they just said, look, we can't do this anymore. It's not good for us, and we're not making any money, and the only reason we're doing this is to make money so people can feed themselves. And one of the things that DEM did that was supposed to be good, we did something that was easy for everybody, but it wound up having a really bad impact on what we do. The numbers of about 25% contamination into a recycled product that's a lot. What happens here is that when we have a contract with a recycler, we require that recycler prove that the materials were actually recycled, and we do not pay them for any material that they collected that was not recyclable. So you go in, and keeping that in mind, this is a mixed recycle bin. I'm certain there are a lot of valuable recyclables in there, but you sure can't tell from that picture. And what caused this? What caused this was not people being bad, but people trying too hard to be good. They wanted everything to be recycled, and if they put it in the recycle bin, it would get recycled. But that just didn't happen. And that is the real issue on recycling, is that recycling is from the heart. People do it not because it's cheaper, it isn't, but they do it because they're trying to do the right thing. And that's where we're stuck now, is saying, what is the right thing? At a presentation I saw a while back, the person indicated that about 95% of the ocean plastics can be traced back to 11 rivers in the world. 9 rivers. 7 that are in Southeast Asia and 2 in Africa. And that's 95% of the plastics. When we have sent plastics over, we don't know what happens. We lose control when we ship to another jurisdiction that doesn't have legislators that put in laws and regulations that are there to protect and make things better. We lose that control when we send these products off, even if we're sending them. I mean, we're 3,000 miles from everywhere. And if it goes east or it goes west, we're still 3,000 miles away from anywhere that's going to be able to do something. So we went in and we had to make changes to the 2-bin recycle program. Why? We had a 4-year contract with our recycler, 1 year and then 3 renewals. And a contract is an agreement between 2 parties to do something that you both agree they're going to do. And you can't have one party say, I want a contract, and the other say no and have a contract. And so the contract is up on the 1st of October every year. And just prior to the 1st of October, the contractor came in and said, look, I can't do it. I want to shut it down. 1st of October, everything is shut down. I am pulling out totally. And the county is only 1/2 of that contract. And so we were stuck and said, no, 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 we have to come to some middle ground. And so, and just to give you an idea on the, we talked about some of the cost. The landfill is about $110 a ton to dispose, and we're paying between $159 and $300, $292 a ton to recycle. As I said, recycling is not cheaper than not recycling. But that is a price that we said we will pay, we're willing to pay that. The other thing is, when you're in a county department, the county can't borrow money, it can't print money. It has to balance its budget. So any money that I take to pay more in recycling, I have to not do something else. Okay? So it's not like, yeah, well, we'll just write a bigger contract. Can't do that. It takes 5 to 6 months for a new contract to go through the entire process. So in spite of everything else, as much as we wanted to continue doing everything, we couldn't. And so we did come up and say, what do you do? What will you do? And so corrugated cardboard, brown paper, and then glass. And for that, it's still costing us, we got about $26 a ton separation in cost. But that is something we could do. So we took what we could get in the contract and tried to go forward from that. So when we say the county stopped recycling, that's true because it was our contract. But there was we had few options. None of them were good. So we're doing cardboard, brown paper, glass only. Cans can go into the scrap metal bins, and the Hi-Fi program, and everyone has talked about the Hi-Fi program. Well, they're still taking plastics. Yes, they're still taking plastics, but those containers are clean. You don't put in your Tide detergent bottle in with your Hi-Fives. And it's significantly subsidized by the state. The state subsidizes that because they collect the money that everyone here pays for. And that money is what allows us to work that program. And so the Hi-Fi is still working. And again, that's good. I wish we could do that for everything. Just to put this into perspective, fiscal year 2018, we did about 283,000 tons that we landfilled, all right, that we created. Of that, we diverted about 58,000 tons. And of that, green waste was about 38,000 tons. So about 20% of our diversion is green waste, about 7% is non-green waste. Now this does not count, I have to add, if you get the big box stores like Costco and Safeway, Target, they all take care of their own packing material that's there, the boxes. Every time you go to Costco and they say, do you want a box? And you say, yes, you've just reduced their transportation bill. Okay? Because what they don't take, they pack up, they break down, and they ship off. All right? Also, what's not included in there are white goods, like all of your refrigerators, your old washer dryers. They do not go in the landfill. They are recycled in another program. As Representative Lowen mentioned, the electronics. And we may have more electronics, but it takes a lot of smartphones to weigh as much as one of those old analog televisions, if you remember those big boxes. And so we have a lot of other things that we do. In addition, things like waste oil is part of our program. You go up to a place and you change the oil in your car, you need a place to put it. And so all of the oil recyclers that you have are the ones, they're in our program, and they work with DEM trying to get those waste products diverted. Just to put the change in recycling into perspective as well, when we measured up how much waste we would have an increase in, that is those plastics and the paper that would normally recycled, it comes to about 3,100 tons a year, which is about 1 to 1.5% of what we landfill annually. Okay, it's not something that is going to tip the balance in the near future, but it's something that we need to be able to deal with. If you can't take a look at, you can't see these numbers, but if you take a look, every day we get about 360,000 pounds of paper that goes to the landfill. Every single day we get about 134,000 pounds of plastic. And so when we take a look at this scope, we're not talking about a couple of boxes. These are hundreds of thousands of tons a day. So I only do that to say that the issue that we have is not small. One of the things we're going to do now is we're formulating a new request for information. That is, we go out and say, look, we have these recyclable materials that we believe are recyclable. We would like somebody to come in here and deal with them. What do you suggest we do? That's what an RFI is. An RFP is, okay, we've decided we want to do this. What will you charge us to do this? And I can't tell you how many programs we get one bidder. And if you have one bidder, one of the two of us is at a mercy point, and it's not the person bidding. And we're also looking at getting a complete different kind of contract, and we're really not sure what we can do given the market, the general world market. But we do have, as a representative said so nicely, the plastic source reduction group. Senna, who is a recycler in blue, she'll answer any kind of questions you have, is on that work group, and she is representing the county of Hawaii on the work group. So we're doing that. We're taking a look at things like when we banned the polystyrene foam takeout containers. One of the things that is used, Maui uses, it's a number 6 plastic container. It's a reusable container, but it's one that we can't recycle. We couldn't recycle before. When you had to take the caps off, we said, look, we'll take the high five, but we won't take the caps. That's because that was a number 6 plastic, and that was not recyclable, and that started long before we had this issue, but that was an indicator of the kind of market problems that we had. So we're working on getting a program where you can go into a restaurant, bring a container with you and say, look, I'd like to take this home, and you put it in your container and you take your container home, and then you wash it out and you can use it again. These are small steps, but they are indications of how people really want to do the right thing and want to try and reduce the sources that we have of these waste products. We do sponsor reuse stores and Habitat for Humanity. These things are, these NGOs are there to try and help, and we support them as we can in the county. There's also Resolution 301 that was just passed by the county council, urging DEM and research and development to work together on alternate ways to deal with waste stream reduction. Where did that come from? As you know, we had our bus problems, and we looked at getting electric buses. And the solar-powered electric buses were great if you were going from Waikiki to Ala Moana, but it didn't work very well when you're going from Hilo to Kona, and you went from sea level to 5,000 feet, and then you had to go back down, and then you had a 4-hour battery recharge. So they said, we need to find something else, and so they looked at hydrogen. And research and development came to us in our landfill, which is about 15, 20 miles up the road. We currently flare the methane that is produced because we have nothing else to do with it. And we don't just release it, so we burn it. We think that there's enough methane there to generate electricity and make hydrogen. So there's some alternate and repetitive use of the waste product. Now, if you put your organics in a landfill, you're going to collect 20, 30, maybe 35% of the amount of methane that's actually produced. So if we could capture that in another way, generate electricity, make hydrogen. When you burn hydrogen, you get water. You don't get CO2. And so that's something that we were looking to do, and we're going to be working together with research and development on this program. So where do we go from here? So we have questions. Why did we do what we did for the last 20 years with recyclables? Why did we do it? I mean, that's a question. We did it because we wanted the planet to be better. The question is, what do we do now? And we should say, did we make it better by the things that we did? And that's one of the things that I think we really need to investigate and look into. We also have a short and a long term. In the short term, there's nothing we can do about plastics and plastics recycling. There's nothing. I have no idea what to do. In the long term, we have to come up with a good, conclusive endpoint that gives us a positive return. We have to take a look at processes that have a minimum impact on the environment and a much smaller carbon footprint than what we were doing before and the other alternatives. We need to measure what we do with recyclables with a life cycle analysis. That means not only the money, how much does it cost over the lifetime, but what does it cost us environmentally? What is that? What is our carbon footprint? And I don't know what the answer is going to be. I don't know where we're going to go, but I think we have to look and try and get there, wherever there is. And we have to have a very neutral type of evaluation process. And we're going to be looking, when we work with research and development, of having the judgment criteria before we have a process. We want to come in and say, this is neutral to any kind of technology or process that we're going to use. And again, what costs are we willing to bear? We have a zero-sum budget in the county. We are not a rich county. We have a lot of land. We don't have a lot of people, though we're growing at about 15% a year. And the more we grow, the more important the decisions are that we make today to try and fix these problems. I want to close with two things. Some of you use transfer stations that are closed when you get there. If you do, we have a new process, and the poster's over there, where you can get civil defense type warnings. If you're signed up for civil defense, it says, hey, high winds, flash flood. You can also sign up, and it will tell you whether a transfer station is open or closed, whether it's accepting green waste or not green waste, and that will come right to your phone. So before you get in your truck, you can look and say it's open or closed. And the sign there will tell you, give you all the places to go. I thank you for your kind attention, and say thanks.
This isn't on either. There we go. Okay, hi. No, that's not why I'm talking about that. I'm talking about it because since we cannot recycle, I think it's a viable alternative that we should seriously consider. And my understanding is that there is a county composting facility that is supposed to be opening, so there would actually be an end of life cycle for this product here on our island. So I think it's something that is important, because I think if we can use a finite resource or a renewable resource instead of a finite resource anywhere that that's possible, we should be making that change. There's a lot of places in our lives that we don't have those alternatives. Healthcare is a great example of that. A syringe is made from plastic, and that's going to be single use, not compostable. But if food service has that opportunity, then I think we should consider it. I think we need to make those decisions in our daily life to choose renewable over finite whenever possible.
I touched on this briefly in my comments. The High Five program, number one, does not have the high contamination levels that you find in the other recyclable plastics. So for a vendor that is handling that, he knows or she knows that they're getting a clean product that can go and that will not be showing contamination when it comes to the end user. And so they can get a higher price because they know it's clean, and they don't suffer the penalties when someone says, no, that load's contaminated, take that barge back to Hawaii, and that has happened to vendors. And so that's part of it. The other is that the costs are subsidized by the High Five Fund, and that fund allows to pay these contractors more so they can take a greater risk and get a lower price for their product.
Yeah, I'll just, Director Kucharski, I think, said that. But I think they're handled in separate buckets because the High Five program is designed separately, and there's a separate person, a separate contractor who handles it. And I'm not sure if the recycling was then done on a separate contract as well. But I think that because you pay 5 cents when you purchase it, that goes in a special fund from the state, and then that money is there. I mean, I think if we looked at putting deposit amounts on, broadening that type of plastic, maybe it would make it easier to recycle them. But I think that's probably the reason why right now, at least in part, it's easier with the High Five.
If I can also add, there are, whenever you have a problem, you have a way that you can make money, people will start looking at it. And there has recently been some articles on a universal solvent that has been discovered that will take any plastic and dissolve it, make it into a usable end product to make additional plastics. That is, you can continue to recycle that. There is Procter & Gamble is looking at taking their plastic jugs, and they're probably a 6 or something, and taking them and recreating with the process their own plastic containers, and they're doing that within their facilities. So once we could not get rid of these materials inexpensively by sending them out of sight, people started working on alternative ways to treat them and deal with that issue. And that's when I say we don't know where we're going to go, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be, we're not going to go back to doing what we've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years.
So one of the questions is that if there's a styrofoam ban, why is there styrofoam still being sold in the stores? And maybe that can go to Nicole. So
the counties all have different laws right now, so I can't speak to exactly what they are, but I think the focus has been on food service containers, and I think that just comes down to a question of the politics of what's possible to get passed when, there's things that come up when you try to pass this legislation that you hadn't thought about, like styrofoam sometimes gets used in road construction, like highways, something I didn't know. I think they need to find alternatives. I'm not saying that's okay and then we keep doing it, but I think the food service containers are the low-hanging fruit. That is the thing that we have replacements for. It's the thing that you use for a few minutes and throw it away, and it stays in the environment forever. So there's a kind of a strong moral argument to make about it, and so that's what's been tackled first because it's the easiest one to get to.
okay.
Also, the reason it's still sold in stores is the styrofoam ban was intended for the restaurants and those that were actually packaging and selling it. So you can buy it in stores because you're going to be using it in your own home. That was the reason it was exempted from that bill. I'm not exactly sure why they ended up doing that, but that is that you as a consumer, if you want to use it in your home, they're going to let you. But the restaurants...
Is it safe to reuse a 6 or a 5 and keep washing it and storing food in it?
You're asking, I'm sorry, I I know I'm supposed to be smart, but I don't have the answer to that.
That is true. Going to Grandma's house, it used to be everything was in butter dishes and cottage cheese containers, and you didn't know what was really in the refrigerator. So, all right. Well, I just thought I would ask that for us wishful recyclers. We have a couple of questions that have to do with tin cans. So, if someone says tin cans, can't one of the bins at Kailua-Kona be labeled just for tin cans? We now have to drive across the road to the scrap metal yard for the tin cans.
I'll take a look at where we have the scrap. The transfer stations that I use, the scrap metal is right there in a container next to the cardboard or the paper. So
Okay.
if we have a situation where we don't have a local bin, I'll check and figure out where that is and see if we can make a change.
We had this question, why can't the county manage recycling on the island, and what is stopping us? And you kind of answered some of that, I think. But do you have any additional thoughts on that?
The county does the best they can with the resources that they have available. I will be the last person to say that no mistakes have been made. The last person to say that you shouldn't look at us and expect us to do better. And it is through the concerns and it's through expressing desire to make things better that we move and make changes. And other than to say we have budget issues, we have personnel issues, all of those things, I can give you a ton of excuses that don't matter a bit when a transfer station is closed or all of a sudden something that you've been doing you can't do. I can only tell you that when the problems arise, we work on them as fast and as well-intentioned as we can, given the circumstances that we operate under. And I'm the last person to whine. I don't want that to sound like a whine. It's just a fact that we have difficult requirements like contracts. We can't get a contract out in less than 4 to 5 months. Mm-hmm. That's just a fact. We have to bid. Mm-hmm. We can't just issue contracts to somebody because we know they're good. So there are a number of things that constrain us from moving quickly, but it also stops us from making quick mistakes.
I'll just say too, Bill, Director Kucharski will be surprised because I'm not always here defending the county. Normally we're disagreeing about things, but it is challenging in Hawaii County because we don't have the economy of scale for recycling that larger, like that if you're on the mainland or even Oahu, they have more options of what they can do. We have a relatively small amount. So from a business perspective, to undertake projects on island where we can really close the loop is a lot more challenging for those to pencil out and make them cost effective. Hawaii County also has the challenge of having a relatively small number of people with a much larger land mass and amount of area to cover than all the other counties. So that makes just our cost per capita for the county of infrastructure, of projects, of municipal waste management, all that stuff is more challenging for us than I think it is for the other islands. I want to add, I think as an island, we come face to face with these issues sooner than the rest of than states or nations that aren't islands have to. And so it's frustrating, but also it's this opportunity, I think, to be a leader and to really take stock of where we are and say, what we've been doing, it's enabled us, we feel like we're doing good by recycling. It's enabled us to sweep the problem under the rug and to not have truly sustainable solutions. We could go back, maybe someone will come in and say, hey, actually, we want to take that, we want to bid on that contract after all to Department of Environmental Management, go back to what we were doing a few months ago. But we'd be back to where we're not really looking at the big picture environmental impact of it. and the life cycle analysis of it and the carbon impact of it. And so, yeah, I think we have opportunity here to talk about these alternatives, and it's never easy when you're just some small island state and you're trying to lead, you know, much bigger localities in a direction that they have more capacity to be leading, but not the circumstances that force them to have to do it. So, I don't know, just things to think about.
I have a couple questions that, for Nicole that have to do with the state. What about a statewide contracting for recycling? And would more businesses bid with a higher volume? And then that goes along with, also, there was another question here that had to do with the state on whether they could be in charge of that particular, whether we could take our trash from here to Oahu. We've heard from Bill that they will take, well, not in this particular presentation, but I have heard in the past that they will take it, but we have to pay to ship it. So that's a county-wide, but could it be a state mandated contract?
I don't know if there's anything currently in statute that would prevent counties from like joining together and entering contracts in a partnership. As far as the state taking over, I mean, typically we're asking for more home rule and, you know, more things being put in county hands. So, I mean, I think there's always a push and pull there. There are divisions of what is county jurisdiction and what is state jurisdiction in the law, and I think that saying that we're going to solve the problem by shifting it from one to the other is not usually the place I would start, because just shifting it from, you know, one hand to another, there's different sets of problems with each entity being the manager. So I would start by, but I do think with the economy of scale question, I've thought about that too. There is, I'm not actually sure to the answer to that, but it's something that I need to look into and that Director Kucharski might have more information on. But yeah, can the counties work together? Would Oahu accept, you know, would they be interested in accepting waste from neighbor islands? They'd probably send it to H-Power, which it would get burned and turned into energy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, things, I'll let you in.
Well, that goes into it. Well, do you have anything to add, Bill?
Well, just that, and we talk about sustainability, and sustainability as being one of the goals and one of the things that our environmental programs should encourage, and that's an endpoint. Right now, when you take a look at the waste that we're disposing of in the landfill or anywhere, is 95% of it imported to the state? I think so. And so, in my mind, we have a responsibility. If we have brought it here, we have a responsibility to deal with that problem that we have created as consumers, and we need to do that in a way that is responsible for us. And that's not what we have been doing. And so I think that's one, when I said we need to take a look at the whole process, what we've been doing, that is part of it. If we want to be sustainable, that means we have to take care of what we cause to be generated, which are everything that we bring into the state.
It really puts the responsibility on all of us, yeah. And I think that, you know, just as a regular consumer, person that lives here, I do my own vermicompost at home, I compost at home. If you're getting junk mail, you can call those companies and tell them you want to be off their list. Sometimes they won't take you off and you keep getting letters, you can keep calling them. You can demand, you know, less waste. You can search for the things that are refillable or reusable. And, but there's a lot of small things that you can do. If you have a business, you can require all of your employees to change their margin settings to narrow. And that will save you immensely. Paper and ink, you can go to eco-printers. You can make it mandatory that you do double-sided printing. And so that leads us into a couple questions here about paper. So the county's paper changes. And so we can't compost paper, or I mean, we can compost paper, according to Elizabeth, but the county is no longer taking paper. So there is no market for paper?
There is, no, not really.
Okay.
If you take a look at, have any of you ever gotten a cardboard box from China? Have you ever looked at it too long and because you did, it started to crack and crumble? That is what happens when you continuously recycle and recycle and recycle. You have fiber lengths of lignums in wood that will come in, and the longer those pieces are, the stronger the paper, the stronger the cardboard. Every time you recycle, that shortens. That's why the boxes crumble and they don't hold up, because they've been recycled and recycled. You cannot, in perpetuity, recycle, I don't think, anything. And so there's some endpoint to it. Once we have, our compost facility is scheduled to open in July 1 of 2020. Once we have a commercial recycler, then we can take paper, newspaper types of things that will be ground up with the other organic materials, and that can be composted down. You cannot, it's very difficult to compost newsprint or anything at home. You don't get the temperatures, you don't get the breakdown. There are a number of things that have to happen for the newsprint to break down. There are some companies that are using, that need newsprint. They wrap flowers in that they ship out, but I don't think they can take everybody's newspapers. They can take a portion of them, and that's one of the reasons I put the scale up there. There are small things we can do, but we need to take a look at the whole package and try and take care of those issues. We can take little bites, but we're going to have to take a look at a different way to deal with things, in my opinion, if we're going to really solve the problem.
And, let Elizabeth answer some of that about paper.
So on the paper side of things, I know from Sustainable Island Products, we look for all of our paper goods to either be Sustainable Forestry Initiative certified or Forestry Stewardship Council certified, and a minimum of 60% post-consumer recycled paper. So we have, as of late, I have spent several months trying to find actually toilet paper that meets that criteria. I called the second largest paper company in the United States, Cascade, because they do make one, and I was trying to source it. I was told by them that because so much office paper is now not being generated because we've gone to the cloud, we've gone away from printing as much materials, there's not enough raw material for them to be making it anymore. So that, I think that's part of it. There's still plenty of material coming in, but it's not at the same volume. So that might be part of the reason why there's not as much demand for purchasing that as a recyclable product. They're turning to cardboard as part of that. They're using cardboard to make toilet paper.
That sounds comfortable. But actually, part of the answer sounds kind of good, right? There's a worldwide change towards using less paper products in general. That's good to hear. And then also, Bill, you answered several of the questions, was where, when, and where are we going to have our composting facility? We don't currently have a commercial composting facility, correct? But we will in January 1st, 2020. July 1st. Where will it be?
It's going to be in Pune in the Shipman Business Park.
If you have another question, I'll wait for that, or I can just say what's on my mind.
You can go ahead and say what's on your mind. If you had something to add to that, go
Sure.
ahead.
I mean, I think what we're kind of all circling around is that we need to change how we do things here, but also it's kind of impossible to do that in a vacuum. So there has to be changes happening globally to make everything all fit together. But I think that what we do here, even though that makes our road more challenging, what we do here can help drive that change. So it's like if we want to do composting and have, soil, it's like if we want to compost newsprint and magazines, are they using non-toxic inks? Is that something that all magazines and papers that are printed should be doing automatically, globally or nationwide? And then I think a lot of it comes back, we're talking a lot about the waste that we produce in our homes, what kind of goes out in the rubbish every day or every week that we're really hyper aware of. And then I think we forget the point, that Director Kucharski brought up earlier, which is just that piece is important, but it's a small percent of the total waste stream, and that so much of it comes from larger sources. What happens when you're done with your car? What happens when you've replaced your carpet? What happens with large appliances that don't get shipped out? And there's all this other stuff that creates a massive waste stream. And I keep circling back to, I think, what I said in my PowerPoint, which is the manufacturers and producers of these items basically get off scot-free. They take, often raw virgin resources and create something and sell it, and then disposing of it becomes, something that happens on the back of taxpayers. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of room to just change that cycle of business. I think that there's still money to be made and a market out there and products that people will buy and keep and sell, but that if producers should be responsible for the whole life cycle of their process. And if we move to that system globally, it's going to change how these products are designed and how the producers think about them. There may be not so much planned obsolescence, benefits Apple when you have to replace your phone every 2 or 3 years. Even though you would be perfectly happy with it if it just kept working. And, they don't have to take it. They do often take them back, but they're not mandated to. There's a lot of other products like that I think if a company was responsible for having to deal with its end of life, they would find a way to design it where they could reuse it themselves, or they could get much more value out of those products. Instead, right now, it's much cheaper for them just to let us throw it in the landfill, and it's not their problem.
Mm-hmm. That is really important to remember. I had mentioned I had a group of students today that I was talking to about, we were talking about statistics and how companies actually, when they give you that manufacturer guarantee, they want to make sure that that product is not going to make it to that, so that they don't have to replace it. So there is a certain amount of responsibility that some of these larger companies need to definitely take upon themselves. So somebody did have a question about that in particular and wanted to know if there were incentives for businesses and participants to try and solve this problem of recycling and or requiring big box stores to try to take care of that. But it sounds like Costco takes all of their waste, ships it all back because they have to ship containers anyway, right? So, but they do produce a lot of waste in plastic containers that all go home with us and things like that.
Well, for the individual small pieces, I don't know what we can do. Mm-hmm. But we are looking at, when I talked about budget, we have a zero-sum budget, so the only way to get more money is not to take it from the general fund, but to find another source, like our landfill tipping fees are another source. That is not general fund. So we're looking at taking white goods, your refrigerators, your stoves, your televisions, the electronics, and putting like a deposit or recycle fee on top of that. Of course, the stores aren't going to bite that, but you are, we are, because if we say, look, you get this refrigerator, here's a $20 recycle fee. And so that goes into a pot of money. We get more people to be able to take them and recycle, pay a contractor to move them out. That's something we do with the abandoned vehicles. You have a $12 charge every time you re-register your vehicle, and that goes in, and that's what pays for our abandoned vehicle program, to tow them and dispose of them and get them off the roads. So we're looking at that as a possible big box type of recycle fee for the large appliances and electronics. But that doesn't solve the problem. It just gets its weight, helps to pay for resolving it.
And at the end of that question, I'll take some personal responsibility for, are the three of you drinking from plastic water bottles? And I would have to say that I'm really sorry. Yes, Elizabeth has her. I have my reusable mug here. But as a community group, as community forums, we have already talked about this as a board of not providing. We do need to give them, we provide our speakers with some water, but we have been discussing that, and we will be hoping to be able to provide our speakers with a reusable mug with a community forums logo that they can then use, and because we do have drinking fountains outside. I am doing my part though, and Elizabeth is too. Usually Nicole is too.
Yes, I've been
I'm sorry. Yes, they're drinking out of
painfully,
plastic water
self-consciously
bottles.
cringing every time I take a sip from here.
I
But
know.
I didn't bring my water bottle. I have so many at home, and like I said, I have a bunch of family visiting. I went to half of dinner with them, and then came here. Been running around all day, and I didn't have a water bottle, and I was thirsty.
It happens.
So yeah, I
But that is a good
apologize.
point. So we do have lots of other products out there, like reusable straws. I carry this in my purse every day, everywhere I go. I have a fork, a spoon, I have a knife, and chopsticks. And there it is. So everybody can do that, right? Nice little handy kit. You can buy them online. So we have another question that is the Puakolo training area is diverting 60% of their garbage. And Pohakaloa. Okay, so 60% of this, was this your question? 60% of their garbage, the county is doing 10%. How can the county emulate that program? Do you know the answer to that?
Yes, give me the federal budget for DOD and I'll do it.
Also going to Bill, is there, well, we already talked about paper. And you know, here's another question. What was the amount of going to the landfill every day on the island? You did answer that, and it was up on the screen, but it was difficult to see
Yeah.
with the numbers. So
I'm sorry,
could you answer that again? What was the amount going to the landfill
Yes.
each day?
Um,
And you can also
About-
find that online if you go to the County of Hawaii's website. They have a brand new website with a lot of different information. You can also go to the Hawaii Green Growth Initiative and look at the Aloha Plus Challenge and look at all the islands and which islands, what they're producing, where that waste goes, and find a lot of details there as well. But go ahead and answer that.
About 360,000 pounds, 180 tons a day is the estimate. And plastics is 134,000 pounds a day, about 67 tons. Those are the numbers, and there are copies. If anybody wants a copy of these slides, just let me know, and I'll be happy to send them to you.
And when we do the broadcasting on television, they they take the actual PowerPoints and put that in, so you'll be able to see that a lot better in the video. And I apologize, we're not able to dim the lights in here, so this just happens. So we had a couple people asking, what can we do to help? So can we recruit volunteers, create school programs, partner with, assist the county in recycling efforts? What can be done to educate island residents and businesses? And just general, how can we help?
From my perspective, when people speak out and they call, and occasionally I get pleasant calls, a lot of times I do not, but everyone that calls is trying to make a point and is trying to send information or request to the department. Our job is to listen to you. We will do what we can to resolve the issues that we have in front of us. Again, I think we need to take a more global look at our waste issues rather than paper and plastic and whether it's compostable or not. And we need to maximize the value of the materials that we bring in here, into our county. And I think if we do that, we will gradually find that we are actually using everything that we bring in. And that would be my end goal, that we could recycle or reuse essentially 100% of the waste stream. That's not possible, but it's got to be better than 20% or the 7% that we're doing now of non-green waste material. We can do better. We're just in a position where we don't have a lot of the advantages that you have. We cannot truck materials from Kansas to Iowa. We can't do it. And so we have to take a look at our solutions are going to be much different than they are in the mainland because our situation is much different than the mainland. And so the kinds of programs that we're going to have to develop are going to say, what do we have? What can we do with it? How can we make a product that we need? Mm-hmm. And right now, I would love to have no petroleum products imported into the state. But we can't do that if we throw away everything that was made with petroleum and ignore that as a resource. Mm-hmm. And so we need to take a look at how can we do this better. Doing the wrong thing very, very well should not be an end. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm always afraid that that's what we wind up doing.
So we really need to start looking at waste as a resource and not waste.
I think, of course, we're probably all preaching to the choir. You showed up here on a Friday night, so you care about this issue. But even though it feels like a drop in the bucket, I think personal choices do matter. Consumers have an impact on the businesses. When consumer demand becomes widespread enough, businesses start changing. And so, I've become hyper aware, I think, of, the plastic shampoo bottle and the plastic laundry detergent bottle and all the things that I know cannot now be recycled. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of alternative things out there. So I think that is one thing you can do is start looking into what are alternative products for this. The more that people start being interested in them and buying them, the more widespread it becomes, then, the less it becomes a specialty or a novelty product. The price will drop down. I mean, a lot of times this asking people to do this kind of personal change costs more, which is always one of the arguments against doing it. It's not feasible for people who are more low income potentially. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there are, I think that voting with your dollars matters. And there are places here. I know there's like a new zero waste group on Hawaii Island. I don't know if anyone is here from that. And a couple of Facebook pages. It would be great to compile a list of local businesses that are selling low packaging or no packaging alternatives to some of these things we use in our daily life, to promote that. I mean, I think that those are some, I know it's hard when it feels like you wish you could do more, but I think those things matter. And then, helping us when we introduce measures at the state legislature, when the county council introduces bills, we get a lot of pushback on these things. So there's still a lot of work to do. Supporting those things and helping to build a political movement to get a broader support for them so we can pass some things.
Mm-hmm. Elizabeth and I are on the Kona-Kohala Chamber of Commerce, and I'm the co-chair right now, and she was the former chair. And we do have a Kuleana Green Business Program through the chamber, so you can look for, if you look in the Source magazine, if you want to only work with businesses that meet a certain standard. We do have this recognition that usually people can put on their website. So it will be the Kuleana Green Business Program logo, and if it's on the website or in the window of the business, then you do know that they are adopting to more responsible measures in whatever ways that they can in that particular business. So, and that's really, it's different for so many of us. So, I know different restaurants and coffee shops and places like that, people want to have, that income coming in, but it would be great to have that incentive program of giving somebody a percentage off if they brought in their own cup or they brought in their own plate, or if you're coming into Sack and Save or KTA to get some lunch and you bring your own container and you're taking it home, you get a certain percentage off, or you get miles, or something like that. But it really needs to start with us, and we're not the only ones. So like Bill is saying, Hawaii is different, but this is happening all over the world, in all developing countries. So when this happened, it really caused a complete collapse in recycling all over the planet. And so we're not the only ones that are dealing with this. We are dealing with it in a little bit different way because we are an island. We do have a couple questions about green waste. Green waste transferring, going to the transfer station, that the DOH policy right now diverts green waste from the transfer station to the side of the road. So we have and I'm not familiar with this question.
I will say that I am familiar with that.
Okay.
When all of our transfer stations, we operate 22 of them around the county, are permitted by Department of Health. One of the things they do is provide limits as to how much of anything you can keep and store in that transfer station. For example, we can't leave our containers that have food waste in, leave it there for 7 or 8 days. That's not healthy for anybody. Even if it's not full, we need to remove those containers. We do have limitations, and one in particular that is in a very rural area and has an 80 cubic yard limitation to the amount of green waste that we can store at one time. Why do you have a limit on green waste? Well, when you put green waste down, it starts to decompose. When it starts to decompose, it gets hot. Sometimes it can get so hot it can start a fire. And so and these areas don't have a lot of firefighting equipment on there. There are no fire hydrants outside of our transfer stations. So there's safety issues that go on these limitations. We can only live within the bounds of that, of those limitations. Now, one thing we're looking at is instead of just taking the raw green waste, to get someone that would use a chipper, and we still have a cubic yard measurement. You can get a lot more ground green waste than you can fluffy green waste. Think about it like if you have a cardboard box and you don't crush it down, it takes a lot of space. Once you crush it, it's a lot smaller. Same thing with green waste when it's ground. We did go out, we were not able to get a contractor that was willing to grind that. So we're trying these things, trying to move forward on them, but there are limitations. And I would just say that with the number of green waste stations that we have and transfer stations, to say that because our one station is full and can't take green waste, that's an excuse to dump any material on the side of the road, I think that's a false argument. That is just somebody that's not following the law and is not respecting where he or she lives. And so I don't think that's an excuse. They may be using that as an excuse, but I don't find that an acceptable excuse. But that's me.
I have another different question, and that is, once you do have composting sites, could they take that extra green waste? And then also, could you allow collection companies to collect compostables and then use it themselves to manufacture items here on the islands?
There is, right now we don't have any county code that restricts someone from collecting waste or products. They have to have a permit if they're going to dispose of that material in a landfill. I'm not certain that we would do nothing to stop someone from collecting materials and then reusing it, but for instance, if someone collected food waste and they still had to follow Department of Health rules, pig farmers, for example, they picked up a lot of hotel waste food and store food, but DOH requires that they heat up that material before they feed it to the pigs. That's a requirement. If someone was going to build a compost facility, they also are subject to Department of Health rules. They need to get a permit to do that. But there's nothing in our code that stops anyone from doing that, feels that would be a contribution. Home composting, I'm sure probably most everybody here does some form of that. And we don't have, we're not overrunning with soil on Big Island. And so the more we can generate, the better.
And what should we do with our compostable products? Elizabeth, should we put them in our garbage bag and forget about
So
it?
as of right now, if you're throwing your compostable products away, they're going to the landfill, but hopefully once the composting facility is open, we'll be able to divert that along with that organic waste. If you are home composting, you're more than welcome to put it in your home compost. Like I said before, I have and do compost my materials at home. I try my best not to take to-go containers when I can help it, but if you are going to use the PLA, the clear in your home compost, it's going to take longer to break down for sure, and I would highly recommend cutting it into small pieces. That way it's easier for it to be heated up. It needs 110 degrees. So the PLA needs 110 degrees to be able to begin breakdown. So you need to make sure your compost pile is hitting that temperature consistently for it to be there. And that's why it's difficult to compost the PLA in a home compost, although, like I said, I have done it and it is doable. It's just a lot more difficult.
So when the Kona Brewers Festival has the festival, and it's a zero waste event, and all of those all that compostable waste,
there's somebody that takes it and composts it.
They take it and
Yes,
compost it.
so there is
up in
somebody
the
that
north.
is taking that and composting that at their home.
Oh, okay.
So it's a private person that is doing that. So you can find, there are people, I know there's somebody in Hilo that does pick up material from restaurants and compost it right now, but ultimately we hopefully with the facility we can start to close that loop and we can find people that will pick up that product and take it to where it needs to be, because that's the ultimate goal for us. Is we don't want any compostable product to end up in the landfill. If we can compost it, that's from the land to the land, right? Let's make that circle happen.
Are there any questions, any more questions from the audience? Things that we didn't cover?
Well, this is not necessarily a direct question, but should we read into any reason that there isn't anyone from the county council sitting up there right now? Seems to me that there are questions being asked that would be specifically answered by them. Were they not invited, or they didn't?
I can actually answer that. We did invite Councilmember Tim Richards, who is the chair of the Environmental Committee, I believe, but he is away on a trip right now, so he was unable to participate tonight.
Any other questions?
Okay, hang on one moment.
You've explained a lot about our recycling. For me, as a homeowner here, it's all the things that I use in the house that you've talked about at the big box stores. Looking for the future of the Big Island, where is our waste management facility going to be? Where are you in your steps in that process? The monies that need to be allocated for that? what is the future here for us to take care of those things ourselves? Those are things that cannot be dealt with anywhere except for being put in the landfill currently.
Okay, I'll get my exercise tonight.
That's an excellent question. The resolution that just passed requires research and development and Department of Environmental Management to work on answering those questions. What can we do? What is available? If we come up with something that appears to be feasible, we would then have to go out and verify that, and then we would have to come in, do an environmental assessment to determine if we were going to build it, where it would be. And so I have no idea where it would be, have no idea what the cost would be, have no idea whether we can afford it. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to look and try and get all of those questions answered in a positive way, that yes, we can, there is a technology, there is a place, and yes, we can afford it. Personally, I think there are some things that we can't not afford.
All right. Well, I think that leads us into our closing. Last question. Bill, in your opinion, what do you think the future of recycling plastics 5s and 6 or others?
Again, we need to take a look at, there are new technologies that are coming out every day. There are new ways to deal with precursor and taking these plastics, making them a feedstock for another process. We may not be able, have enough to afford a reprocessing facility, but we ought to be able to take these plastics and put them in a form that they can be reused. There are processes that will turn the plastic into bricks or blocks, or as an addition in asphalt or concrete. There are all multiple things that are coming up. I've seen 3 or 4 different processes that have been just very recently brought to fore, saying, look, this is going to solve the problem. It's going to solve at least a part of the problem. Again, I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I know that there's an answer out there that will suit the Big Island, suit the state of Hawaii. It's just up to us to find it and not sit back and wait for it to find us.
Yep. Do any of you have any closing statements or remarks?
Sure. Thank you all again for coming out on a Friday night. And I think I've said this probably a couple times already, but I think we should look at this as an opportunity. It's kind of a difficult transition, a difficult time. But, you know, as Director Kucharski was saying, this conversation is happening not just here, but other places. And there is a lot of research and new technologies happening and things, you know, that before there was almost nothing available to do at scale that we could do on Big Island. And there's more and more things that are becoming options. So hopefully we'll be able to put some of those into action here at some point. But I think we still can't forget that the first thing should be to use less. And really, this isn't something we've spent a lot of time thinking about. There are a lot of great alternatives out there to some of the ways we package things, the products that we use, that you really wouldn't miss them. We're not asking for you to sacrifice anything in your lifestyle. And I mean, I know it's difficult. I'm not doing all these things that can be done personally yet, kind of transitioning there slowly. So it's not a judgment, but I think it's just like when we made the transition of not getting a plastic bag at the store anymore. A lot of people thought that was going to be a terrible sacrifice and a humongous disaster, and everybody, I think, adjusted pretty well. You know, it wasn't so disastrous, and really your quality of life wasn't impacted. And I think there's those small changes we all can make that will also help. And it'll just help too, because your trash can won't fill up so quickly, and that will reduce stress in your life, and that's a good thing. So, yeah.
I have to agree with these two amazing people that I'm sitting next to. Thank you guys for coming out tonight, and I agree. This is an opportunity. I think it's been a wake-up call for all of us on we can't rely on recycling for our future. We need to look at all aspects of what we do and make positive changes where we can. So we don't all have to be perfect at it, but if we all try, that matters. And I really think this is a great way for us to look at our entire life cycle of what we use here. We're an island and we should take care of our island and not lean on sending things somewhere else, but look at what we can do once something is here or prevent it from getting here in the first place. So hopefully we can all work together on that and continue to build a sustainable future for our island.
Thank you.
How about a big hand to all of our three panelists, Elizabeth, Bill, and Nicole. Thank you so much for providing us with very valuable information tonight and for answering all of our questions. How about a big hand to our moderator, Candee Ellsworth, for doing such a great job. And again, thank you so much for being here. This is being recorded live, and I want to remind you that this will be aired on Naleo TV in the next few days. Give us a few days to do our edits and whatnot. And air dates will be posted both on our website and our Facebook page, westhawaiiforum.org and facebook.com, West Hawaii Forum. And their presentations will also be on our website later on. So everything that you've seen here, their presentations will be there as well. So again, thank you very much. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and drive safe home. Can I have all the board members to come up to the dais for a photo op real quick, please? Board members?
This is the representation of the kind of quality of speakers that we have here at West Hawaii Forum. And we put these monthly forums on to provide as much civic involvement and education on issues that are important to you, the community. We are one island. We are one community.